Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Curt 4 to 7 and 4-pole adapter on a 2022 Hyundai Tucson. Now, having 4-pole trailer wiring on your vehicle is great because you get your turn signals, your brake lights and running lights on the trailer, but sometimes you are towing a trailer that has a 7-pole and then you're kind of stuck without that lighting function unless you have an adapter, and there's a bunch of different styles available, but this is a really nice way to ensure that you're not going to have to worry about carrying an adapter with you because we're able to have both. So we have our 7-way here with a spring-loaded cap that's going to keep it nice and closed when we're not using it, so it's going to stay nice and clean. And the same goes for the 4-pole here that mounts up to the bracket. It's got a nice little cap here, so if you're hooking up to your 4-pole, no problem, and your 7-way is going to be right there. Now, you are going to need an existing 4-pole wiring kit to get the existing 4-pole to plug into this. And the 7-way, you do have the ability to later on add a brake controller. Now, you are going to need to run some extra wires for that, but this is a good start. That way, if later on down the road you need to tow something that has brakes, you could eventually get a trailer brake and have that option. Now, as far as installation goes, it's super easy. Pretty much you just plop this into place, put the hardware in, and then you're just going to go ahead and plug in that 4-pole to your factory one. And that's going to give you the 4-pole wiring, as well as hooking up to a 7-way is going to give you those same lighting functions. But again, if you are planning on doing a brake controller, you are going to need to be doing a little bit more than we're doing today here on our vehicle. But speaking of the installation, let's take a look at that and get yours installed. Now, to begin our installation, you're first going to need to have 4-pole wiring already installed on your vehicle, as it's going to plug into our new harness. Now, if you haven't picked up 4-pole wiring harness, I highly suggest the Tucson T1. This one's a simple plug and play. It can be done in about 5 minutes. And also the quality of Tucson wiring is always really good. I've been really happy with it, and we generally don't get any returns. So if you need to pick that up, you can pick that up here at eTrailer. Now, the next thing that we're going to be doing is getting our bracket set up, because this needs to slide over to make its way to the plug. That way we can mount it up. And our customer today has a draw tight hitch, so it has the tab already welded on to where this should just simply bolt up to it. If not, there's brackets available, or you can also self-tap this into the hitch. Now, something that's interesting is when I open the kit, normally you do have mounting holes, and mine didn't for whatever reason, so I'm gonna have to drill those out. And also, they don't provide you with the hardware to get this mounted onto your bracket or self-tappers. It does come with the hardware to bolt it on here, but we are gonna have to make those drill hole marks, so I just kind of used the holes here as a template, mark those, and I'll get these drilled out, and I'm gonna grab some hardware and get this ready to mount up. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that with those holes drilled that this mounts up to our bracket nice and easy. And I'm just using some hardware that I had here at the shop. I do recommend using a nylon lock nut or some star washers here, just as over time those bouncing in the road can cause those to loosen, and you want to make sure that it holds on for the lifespan of the vehicle. Now, if you already have the 4-pole mounted here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get mine, I just have zip tied up to the hitch, and that way we can pull this back to make way for our plug. And we'll be attaching this a little bit later, but we need to make sure that we have our plug in place before making those connections. So we'll just take all of our wires, feed it through our bracket, and then with the included hardware, we'll go ahead and get this tightened down. Now, when getting this mounted up, pretty easy. Pass the bolt through, make sure it goes all the way through the bracket, and you might have to kind of help it along. I just use my Phillips head screwdriver to kind of push that through. Now, we're going to need to follow it up in a specific manner. So we'll put our flat washer on first, and then our split washer. And then we'll follow it up with the nut here. And to get it tightened down, we're going to be using our Phillips on one side. And then I just have a 5/16 wrench to hold that in place. So we'll go ahead, get this snug down, and then you can go ahead and repeat for the remainder of the hardware. So now that we have that mounted up, we're going to go ahead and grab the 4-pole section here, and we're just going to slide this into the bracket. You can see it's got this groove to where that just kind of goes in the side bracket, and that way you have your 4-pole and 7-pole. And then we can go ahead and cap this up. Now I'll probably go back later with some black wire loom that we have here just to kind of clean it up. That way you're not seeing these exposed wires. The other option is you can kind of just zip tie it up to the larger wire loom here, and that's going to also give you a nice clean look. But what we have left here is our 4-pole, and then we have these wires. Now the 7-way is great because that's going to allow you to have a brake controller, but if you are planning on using a brake controller, you're going to need to get the ETBC7 kit, and that way you can run your wiring up to that brake controller. Now our customer today is just using it that way. They can have 7-pole as well as 4-pole. That way they can hook up the trailers, but they're not going to have that braking feature. But what I'm going to do is just kind of tape these back, and that way they're nice and protected. I'll use electrical tape to kind of just seal all these up. That way if they ever want to run a brake controller, they have that option later on. So I've gone ahead and taped these up. Now our wiring run is not super long, but we do need to get our ground wire mounted up. It's got the ring terminal already on there. And what you can do is take a self-tapping screw and drill it into the raw metal of the chassis. What I'm going to do here, just because it's a little bit easier and I have the extra hardware, is there's actually a stud underneath here that fits the ring terminal perfect. So I have a small little nut here, and I'm going to go ahead and just thread that on there, and that's going to be a nice solid ground for our ground wire. I'll go ahead and get that tightened down. So now we need to take our 4-pole and attach it to our existing 4-pole that we had on our vehicle, and I'm going to just cut the desk cap off this one. And to make sure that this doesn't come loose over time, I'm going to be plugging this in together, and if you want to, you can put some dielectric grease in here just to kind of help keep moisture from building up. But we're going to go ahead and just plug this in, and then I'm going to run a zip tie around the entire thing, and that way they're going to be stuck together there. And then I'm going to run electrical tape around the entire thing. That way it's nice watertight seal, so over time it's not going to break down from moisture. So I have this zip tied and taped up. Now obviously I have some extra wiring here, and also you're going to see the wire loom is kind of rubbing against the muffler. That's not going to be good because it's going to melt. So what we need to do is get our zip ties, zip tie this up nice and clean away from the muffler, and we're going to tuck up the rest of the wires. That way they're not going to be dangling down. But really, once we have all that buttoned up, and that should do it for us. So I've gone ahead and I've just zip tied this all up, and using the hitch works pretty well. And the main thing is I have clearance here to where it's not going to rub against the muffler, and I've zip tied this all together to prevent that from happening in the future. So just get everything nice and clean, and that way it's not going to rattle around or be caught hanging down. And then all that's left to do is test it. So we're going to be using a 4-pole tester as well as a 7-pole tester. The other way that you'd be testing maybe at home is, if you don't have those testers, is plugging it into your trailer, have someone go through the light sequence and make sure that they're transmitting to the trailer properly. So now I'm going to just run through our light sequence, and we're going to start with our running lights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and then finally our brakes. And that was a look and installation of the Curt 4 to 7 and 4-pole adapter on a 2022 Hyundai Tucson.